गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमम् ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणां ब्रह्मणस्पत आनशृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् प्रणो देवी सरस्वती वाजेभिर्वाजिनीवती धीनामभित्र्यवतु गणेशाय नमः सरस्वत्यै नमः श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः निधनपतये नमः निधनपतान्तिकाय नमः ऊर्ध्वाय नमः ऊर्ध्वलिङ्गाय नमः हिरण्याय नमः हिरण्यलिङ्गाय नमः सुवर्णाय नमः सुवर्णलिङ्गाय नमः दिव्याय नमः दिव्यलिङ्गाय नमः भवाय नमः भवलिङ्गाय नमः शर्वाय नमः शर्वलिङ्गाय नमः शिवाय नमः शिवलिङ्गाय नमः ज्वलाय नमः ज्वललिङ्गाय नमः आत्माय नमः आत्मलिङ्गाय नमः परमाय नमः परमलिङ्गाय नमः एतत् सोमस्य सूर्यस्य सर्वलिङ्गग्रस्थापयति पाणिमन्त्रं पवित्रम् सद्यो जातं प्रपद्यामि सद्यो जाताय वै नमो नमः भवे भवेनातिभवे भवस्व मां भवोद्भवाय नमः वामदेवाय नमो ज्येष्ठाय नमः श्रेष्ठाय नमो रुद्राय नमः कालाय नमः कलविकरणाय नमो बलविकरणाय नमो बलाय नमो बलप्रमथनाय नमः सर्वभूतदमनाय नमो मनोन्मनाय नमः अघोरेभ्यो खगोरेभ्यो घोरघोरतरेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः सर्वशर्वेभ्यो नमस्ते अस्तु रुद्ररूपेभ्यः तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे महादेवाय धीमहि तन्नो रुद्रः प्रचोदयात् ईशानः सर्वविद्यानामीश्वरः सर्वभूतानां ब्रह्माधिपतिर्ब्रह्मणोऽधिपतिर्ब्रह्मा शिवो मे अस्तु सदा शिवो नमो हिरण्यबाहवे हिरण्यवर्णाय हिरण्यरूपाय हिरण्यपतये अम्बिकापतय उमापतये पशुपतये नमो नमः ऋतगुं सत्यं परं ब्रह्म पुरुषं कृष्णपिङ्गलम् ऊर्ध्वरेतं विरूपाक्षं विश्वरूपाय वै नमो नमः सर्गो वै रुद्रस्तस्मै रुद्राय नमो अस्तु पुरुषो वै रुद्रः सन्महो नमो नमः विश्वं भूतं भुवनं चित्रं बहुधा जातं जायमानं जयत् सर्वो ह्येष रुद्रस्तस्मै रुद्राय नमो अस्तु कद्रुद्राय प्रचेतसे मीढुष्टमाय तव्यसे वोचे मशन्तमगुं हृदे सर्वो ह्येष रुद्रस्तस्मै रुद्राय नमो अस्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः योपां पुष्पं वेद पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पशुमान् भवति चन्द्रमा वा अपां पुष्पं पुष्पवान् प्रजावान् पशुमान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति अग्निर्वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति योऽग्निरायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वा अग्निरायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति वायुर्वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यो वायोरायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वै वायोरायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति वसौ वै तपन्नपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यो मुष्यतपत आयतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वा अमुष्यतपत आयतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति चन्द्रमा वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यश्चन्द्रमस आयतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वै चन्द्रमस आयतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति नक्षत्राणि वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यो नक्षत्राणामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वै नक्षत्राणामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति पर्जन्यो वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यः पर्जन्यस्यायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वै पर्जन्यस्यायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योपामायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति संवत्सरो वा अपामायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति यः संवत्सरस्यायतनं वेद आयतनवान् भवति आपो वै संवत्सरस्यायतनम् आयतनवान् भवति य एवं वेद योऽप्सुनावं प्रतिष्ठितां वेद प्रत्येव तिष्ठति राजाधिराजाय प्रसह्य साहिने नमो वयं वै श्रवणाय कुर्महे समे कामान् कामकामाय मह्यम् कामेश्वरो वै श्रवणो ददातु कुबेराय वै श्रवणाय महाराजाय नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ नमो भगवते रुद्राय। ॐ नमस्ते रुद्रमन्यव उतोत इषवे नमः। नमस्ते अस्तु धन्वने बाहुभ्यामुत ते नमः। यात इषुः शिवतमा शिवं बभूव ते धनुः। शिवा शरव्या यातवतया नो रुद्रमृडया। या ते रुद्रशिवा तनूरघोरा पापकाशिनी। तया नस्तनुवाशन्तमया गिरिशन्ताभिचाकशीः। यामिषुङ्गिरिशन्तहस्ते बिभर्ष्यस्तवे। शिवां गिरित्रतां कुरु माहि गुंसीः पुरुषं जगत्। शिवेन वचसा त्वा गिरिशाच्छावदामसि। यथा नः सर्वमिज्जगदयक्ष्मगुं सुमना असत्। अद्य वोचदधिवक्ता प्रथमो दैव्योऽभिषक। अहीगश्च सर्वा आञ्जम्भयन् सर्वा आश्च यातु धान्यः। असौ यस्ताम्रो अरुण उत बभ्रुः सुमङ्गलः। ये चेमागुं रुद्रा अभितो दिक्षुश्रिताः सहस्रशो वैशागुं हेर ईमहे। असौ यो वसर्पति नीलग्रीवो विलोहितः। उतैनं गोपा अदृशन्नदृशन्नुदहार्यः। उतैनं विश्वा भूतानि सदृष्टो मृडयातिनः। नमो अस्तु नीलग्रीवाय सहस्राक्षाय मीढुषे। अथो ये अस्य सत्त्वानो हन्तेभ्यो करन्नमः। प्रमुञ्च धन्वनस्त्वमुभयोराग्नियोज्याम्। याश्च ते हस्त इषवः पराता भगवो वपा। अवतत्य धनुस्त्वगुं सहस्राक्षशते शुधे। निशीर्य शल्यानां मुखा शिवो नः सुमना भव। विज्यन् धनुः कपर्दिनो विशल्यो बाणवागुम् उत। अनेशन्नस्येषव आभुरस्य निषङ्गतिः। या ते हेतिर्मीढुष्टमहस्ते बभूव ते धनुः। तयास्मान् विश्वतस्त्वमयक्ष्मया परिभुज। नमस्ते अस्त्वायुधायानातराय धृष्णवे। उभाभ्यामुत ते नमो बाहुभ्यां तव धन्वने। परिते धन्वनो हेतिरस्मान् वृणक्तु विश्वतः अथो य इषुधिस्तवारे अस्मन्निधेहितम् नमस्ते अस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यम्बकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकाग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Loving Sairams and a warm and heartfelt welcome to all Sai young adults and viewers from around the world who could join our Veda webinar today. Today's topic of discussion is on the Mantra Pushpam, where all elements become one. My name is Shruti Lakaniki, and it's an absolute honor and privilege to introduce you all to our wonderful guest speaker for today, Dr. Vinnith Pullavarayar. Dr. Vinnith of Malaysia is an enthusiast of Sri Sathya Sai Baba's visionary concept of Veda Poshana, or fostering of the Vedas. He was first introduced to the mantras through Sri Sathya Sai Baba in 2014. He gradually gained expertise in Vedas with the grace of various teachers. Experienced in teaching the Krishna Yajur Vedic syllabus of Parthi, Dr. Vinnith also explores and has started teaching the realms of the Shukla Yajur, Rig, and Atharva Vedas, recognizing the inherent wisdom in each sacred verse. In his ceaseless pursuit to propagate Vedic knowledge, and with the blessings of Swami and his exalted teachers, Dr. Vinnith has pioneered the revolutionary method of WhatsApp Veda training. This innovative approach has transformed the virtual landscape, establishing an effective Gurukula system that transcends geographical boundaries, connecting seekers from across the globe. Through this visionary initiative, Dr. Vinnith has nurtured a global community of Vedic learners and enabling them to immerse themselves in the wisdom of the Vedas. Dr. Vinnith actively participates in Vedic events like yagas and has experience in leading Vedic recitation in the illustrious Youth Conference of 2019 in Prashanti Nilayam. He shares his insights and inspirations gained from recitation of Vedas in his webpage www.mailiragu.com or www.mailiragu.com. So if you have any questions for our guest speaker today, please feel free to use the chat feature on the Zoom, and we will try to get all your questions answered, time permitting. So without further ado, I will now turn it over to Dr. Vinnith to enlighten us about the Mantra Pushpam for today. Thank you, Dr. Vinnith, for volunteering your time to share with us your Vedic wisdom. We are very honored to have you on this call, and we are looking forward to listen to your session. Thank you, and Jai Sairam.
Sairam, thank you. And my humble pranams and Sairam to everyone. So I would like to start with a Shanti mantra, which proclaims unity. So I request everyone to just hold onto the space of oneness for a moment while we reverberate with the mantras of the Sahana Bhavatu. Om Sahana Bhavato Sahanau Bhunakto Sahaviryam Karavavahai तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. So let us move well into Mantra Pushpam, and it is very much relatable to everyone because Mantra Pushpam is indeed a very popular mantra which sounds like Yo Pam Pushpam Veda, Ya Evam Veda. So if these verses reverberate with you, then you know that you would have probably heard this mantra being recited in probably temples, pujas, anywhere near your place. So Mantra Pushpam is a portion. We use the word Mantra Pushpam to refer to a portion from the Vedas, which somewhat speaks about elements, nature, and the correlation between them, and a single string of consciousness that links everything together. So before getting into the details and insights of it, let us look into a brief history, genesis into the Vedas, because Mantra Pushpam is verily part of the Vedas. And unless we have a brief touch, a brief explanation on the Vedas, we may not be able to appreciate the depth of Mantra Pushpam itself. So to make a long story short, so the entire universe, entire creation is a reverberation. It is vibration. And vibration means it's a manifest sound energy. And when we say sound energy, we refer to a geometry. So to put an analogy, when we take a stone and throw it upon a water body, we find ripples. Ripples in a shape, in a particular shape, in a particular geometry. For example, it may be circular or cymatic. So the point of contact between the stone and a water body initiates vibration, which is literally sound energy. And that takes up a form. And we know that crude geometry is the underlying structure for the entire universe that we experience, be it the planets which orbit the sun or the moons that orbit the planet. So when the entire creation is in an amalgamation of various vibrations, various frequencies of vibrations, we understand that this gives geometry to the entire cosmos. So the underlying geometry, the underlying skeleton, so as to say, the underlying framework to the entire universe is sound energy. So our ancient sages who were engaged in deep penance were able to download various forms of knowledge or truths from the cosmos. And when they received these truths, they received them in a series of sounds, series of mantras. And reason is due to the explanation that I gave earlier, because the entire creation is simply in the form of vibrations. So as they received this knowledge, they received them in a series of sounds, which they received and envisioned and realized. So these truths which were received in the form of mantras, which the rishis envisioned, were then taught, and this is what formed an ocean of the Vedas. So there were many rishis who downloaded various parts of the Vedas that we have today, and they were all received directly from the cosmos. So these rishis, these advanced beings, can be equated to radios, modern day radios, where we tune the radio to a particular frequency and we will be able to listen to the particular songs which are played in a particular radio station. So this is why we see that the Vedas are beyond a non-human origin, and they do not have an author. And they hold as the highest authority in our culture as well. And later on, Veda Vyasa, the great sage Veda Vyasa happened, and he became the editor for the Vedas. And that is how the branching of the Vedas into 4 and many other branches within the 4 big groups themselves happened. So Mantra Pushpam happens to be part of the Taitiriya Aranyakam of the Krishna Yajurveda. It occurs in the first chapter, this 22nd Anuvaka. So when we say Aranyaka, it refers to the portion of the Vedas which were originally learned in the forest region, in secretion, in strict discipline. So therefore, we can infer that Mantra Pushpam, although commonly heard today, commonly known today, popular today, or contemporary, it is something which belonged to the Arnyakam originally, and perhaps it contains a lot of deep secrets, deep truths that has to be realized through discipline and sheer discipline towards recitation. So, and this is why the way to realize the Vedas is ultimately via recitation, as Swami always emphasizes. This is why we have to pay attention to the pronunciations, swaras, and other grammar rules that can help us to gain full benefits out of the recitation. And the ultimatum of the recitation should be the realization and the attainment of oneness with the mantra. The mantra becomes a living reality in our experience. So that should be strived upon. And that experience which arises can be shared and we can all enjoy the essence of it. So to give an analogy on why recitation of Vedas is a must, to understand why recitation is the way in which the Vedas were learned, and why this culture is still preserved and is a very huge part of the SSSIO organization. We shall look at it with an analogy which I commonly use. So let us say you're crossing the road. Person X is crossing the road from one junction to another. He crosses the road and he is not aware of a fast vehicle that is moving towards him. Okay? So he's moving and there's a vehicle and he's not aware of it. The driver honks at him, whilst applying brake, honking him in order to alert him of the possible danger. So just by that sound of the honk, which touches the person who's walking, which activates his stimulus, massive changes happen to him. He starts getting into fight and flight response. He starts realizing internally, the process does not really happen in an intellectual level. He does not have time to dissect and look into the signs of danger. It is just a reflex, and internally within his body, there is a realization of danger, and his body activates the mechanism for him to get energetic, to get into a fight and flight response so as to safeguard himself. So here we can understand that merely just by the sound, a honking sound, various forms of knowledge is instantly transferred upon the person who crosses the road. Knowledge of danger, knowledge of a possible vehicle, the details of a vehicle, it could be a car, a bike, or a lorry, and the need for him to safeguard himself. And it all happens in a split second. So this is how the Vedas work. They work beyond intellect, beyond the mind, and they work beyond human compression. So that is why they are to be realized, because these are directly the vibrations which comprises very universe itself. To put it short, we can say that it's the very sound form of Godhood, the very sound form of reality, absolute reality, the very sound form of consciousness. So now let us get into Mantra Pushpam. So having that said, we can infer that a particular Veda mantra has various meanings in accordance to the degree in which we dwell into it. So probably if one is reciting it for a year, he understands the particular depth of Mantra Pushpam. With 10 years, the depth increases. Then it keeps increasing to a point where various expressions of Mantra Pushpam can be felt. And this applies to any part of the Vedas as well. So let us look and let us share on some of the important, interesting insights on Mantra Pushpam. So let us just look at the first stanza. Om Yopam Pushpam Veda Pushpavan Prajavahan Pashuman Bhavati Chandramava Apam Pushpam Pushpavan Prajavahan Pashuman Bhavati Ya evam Veda Yopamayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. So let us just look at a little bit on the breakdown of the words. So Yopam Pushpam Veda, it comes from Yaha, which means whosoever, Apam, which means the waters, Pushpam, which means nourishing and blossoming. The aspect, it can be related to flowers, Veda, to realize, to know something, Pushpa, one, to be full of flowers, Praja, one, to be full of progeny, Pashu, man, to be full of cows, and Bhavati, to become. So the literal meaning here is when one realizes the flowers of water, he becomes full of flowers, progeny, and cows. This is something that all of us know. So in one level, in a superficial way, the Mantra Pushpam comes as part of the Aruna Prashnam, which speaks about the interrelation and the interconnection between elements and nature. So at the superficial level, we can say that this mantra denotes the importance of the essence of water. So, for example, when one realizes the importance of the life-nourishing and blossoming aspect of water, he attains progeny, prosperity, and cattle, right? So, and flower is seen as something which blossoms out of water, as something which is born out of water. So, as to say, it can be equated to the essence of water, something which is born out of water. So, this is historically applicable when we look at the ancient civilizations which reached the peak when they settled near rivers and water bodies. So, and now we understand that the Vedas have many dimensions of truth to them. Let us look at a profounder meaning. So, Pushpam can refer to any aspect which blossoms and nourishes. In the Vedic tradition, water is also seen as a synonym to the state of absolute reality. This is very commonly used. Water also represents the state of Godhood, the state of God, the state of Atma, the state of absolute consciousness, whatever vocabulary we may explore and use, as long as you understand what it means. Okay. So, for example, the word Narayana, when we refer to Lord Narayana, it literally means one who has the waters as his abode. Naraha meaning water and Ayana meaning abode. So water is best representation to the state of absolute reality because it is present as a wave, which very well represents consciousness. It is all pervasive. Water is beyond attributes and color. However, it can adopt the color in which we expose it to. So let us say you put water in a red bucket, it can appear red. So it can equate to the state of Godhood, which is infinite, but upon incarnation as Sri Rama, he is bound to the dharma of a Kshatriya. Just as how water is attributeless, but when confined to a red bucket, it stays within its limitations. And water can be calm or it can come ferocious. So it's just like the absolute reality who can be manifest as Sadashiva or ferocious as Rudra. So both poles are present. So one who realizes the nourishing, blossoming essence of Atma. In a superficial level, we looked at the blossoming, nourishing aspect of water. So when we equate water to Atma consciousness, the nourishing, blossoming aspect of Atma, he attains full prosperity, cattle's progeny. So cattle refers to wealth. Progeny refers to the continuity of a genetic makeup. So progeny does not only refer to having children, it also refers to the continuity. When we teach, when we initiate someone, as in a tradition, we initiate someone into knowledge and make sure that that sampradaya is preserved. That is also progeny. Now let us look at some other verses which has a particular something which is interesting to look at. Agnirva apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati yo agnirayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati apova agnirayatanam ayatanavan bhavati ya evam veda yopamayatanam veda ayatanavan bhavati. So the overall meaning is, it states that this stanza reveals fire as the source of water, and one who knows the abode of fire attains that abode. And vice versa, water is the source of fire, and one who realizes this attains the abode. One who realizes the abode of water attains the abode. So it appears rather contradictory, because initially it says that fire is the source of water, and later on it says that water is the source of fire. So this has been expounded in various parts of the Vedas. So this is where the sense of unity must be understood. So the secrets of the 5 elements is elaborated in many parts of the Vedas, including Mantra Pushpam. We have another beautiful reference in the Taittiriya Upanishad. In one of the verses, the Brahmananda Valli has these verses. Om tasmat va etasmat atmana akasha sambhutaha akashat vayuho vayoraknihi agnerapaha adbhyah prithvi. So this is how it comes. So basically what are they saying is, from Atma, from the state of Atma, synonyms can include God, Godhood, state of enlightenment, absolute reality, consciousness. So from Atma emerged Akasha. So Akasha, as we know, is commonly misinterpreted as space, but the right English vocab would be ether. And Akasha is the element from which the Vedas were downloaded. And Akasha can be only perceived with as sound energy. So that is why it's very difficult to visualize Akasha, because it can be only perceived as sounds. So the entire reverberation that we spoke about initially on how the Vedas, on genesis of the Vedas, this entire reverberation is in a form of Akasha. Okay. So, and later, Akashat Vayuho, from Akasha emerged Vayu or wind, air. Vayo Raknihi, from Vayu, fire. Agnerapaha, from fire, water. From fire arose water. Adbhyah Prithvi, so Adbhyaha, it also means water. So from water later came Prithvi. So as we see, the sequence comes from the most subtle to the most dense. So Akasha is most subtle because it can be only be perceived with as sound energy. From Akasha comes Vayu. Vayu can be perceived with both sound and touch. Vayu to Agni, when Vayu condenses, so it's a cold condensation process from subtlest to grossest. So when Vayu condenses further to Agni, Agni can be perceived with sound, through sound, touch, and form. So Agni, Bhagavan, can be perceived as with form. And when Agni condenses further to form water, water can be perceived with not just sound, touch, form, but also taste. And finally, when water condenses to earth, earth is the most gross element, can be perceived with sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. So this is also replicated in the Vyahritis that we often recite together with the Savitri mantra. Om Bhur Bhuvas Suvaha. So it represents from Bhu, Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha. Gross, less gross, most subtle. So Bhuvaha represents earth element, materialization, pure, rigid, solidity. So how does this happen? Does this condensation happen? If you look at Purusha Suktam, we find a verse. Adhyasambhutah prithvyairasahacha. Purusha Suktam is another beautiful part of the Vedas, which actually talks about the genesis of creation. It talks about how creation happens. So it describes as to how the initiation of creation condensed. It was a gradual condensation in which the infinite attributeless aspect of Godhood started manifesting and taking up forms and condensation. So it's like pure abstract, pure energy taking up matter. And beyond Akasha, there are other subtler tattvas, but we do not include them here. It is often used in Tantra. So we just start on Akasha in accordance to our senses, in accordance to how we can perceive them. So this is how it So that is why in Mantra Pushpam, when we say Agni is the source for water and water is the source of Agni, doesn't surprise us because we have the base understanding that they all come from the same origin. It's just different forms of the same consciousness at different degrees of abstractness or solidness. So we even see this transition happening in nature. For example, when we say that fire is the source of water, we can look at in the example about digestive juices. When the fire of digestion, one of the forms of Lord Agni, just Vaishvanaraha, who comes in the form of the digestive juice. So that digestive Agni is responsible for water, which is in the form of secreted gastric juices or secreted gastrointestinal juices, which help with digestion. And another example, seeing water as the source for fire, when we see lightning emerging from rain clouds. So here, water becomes a source for fire in the form of lightning. So that's in the aspect of nature as well. When we apply it, when we give the denotion of, when we look at water as Atma, how can this be a reality? So fire can be really, water can be a source for Atma. So water meaning absolute reality. When we look at water as absolute reality in a more profounder way. So what is absolute reality of Godhood, the state of Godhood or Atma is verily the source for fire, as we saw earlier. It is the state of Godhood which condenses to Akasha, Akasha to water, water to fire, and fire to, wind to Vayu to Agni, and Agni to water, and water to earth. So that's understood. Now, fire can be a source for absolute reality, for the state of Godhood, when fire, the fire of inspiration, when Lord Agni takes form of inspiration, okay? Inspiration within us. So Lord Agni is not just present in the form of physical fire. Even inspiration we get, the thirst of knowledge, the thirst to attain the state of realization, that is from Agni. So that will lead us to enlightenment. So Agni becomes a way, a source to enlightenment. And that truth manifests in our practice, in our rituals when we perform yaga. In the Durga Suktam, we have many verses which speak about Lord Agni as the source who connects us with the divine. So here Agni Bhagavan becomes a source for water, which is absolute reality. And this is why we perform aradhanas, perform yagas, for offerings in the yagas, which will link us to the divine reality. In fact, there's a famous saint in the Tamil culture, Saint Vallalar, who attained enlightenment by just having his gaze fixed on the Deepa Aradhana, which was offered to the deity in the Chidambaram temple. So this is a Sakshi Pramana that we have in our culture, showing how a particular truth of the Vedas expressing itself in many aspects within our culture. Another example that we can look at, the third stanza, Vayurva apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati yo vayorayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati apo vai vayorayatanam ayatanavan bhavati ya evam Veda yopamayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. So this is the same thing it talks about. So just as how we saw Agni, the same thing. Vayu, wind, let's just use wind as a term. Wind being a source for water. And one who realizes this attains the abode. So what I'm trying to tell is one who realizes this truth attains that abode, the abode of Godhood. So when one has this knowledge, he is enlightened. Likewise, water becomes a source for Vayu, and one who realizes this attains the abode. So again, the same truth with Agni, we are just replacing with Vayu. So the truth has been explained. So how does Vayu becomes a source for water? So that this is at a literal level, when we look at water as just water, later we'll go on to a profounder view. So it is simple when we look at dewdrops. So here wind becomes a source for water, due to literal physical condensation. When water vapor condenses, so that Vayu becomes a source for water. And vice versa, through evaporation, when water evaporates, so it becomes a source for Vayu. So this is what we see experience in reality. So this unity becomes between the elements. The truth that these elements are just the various expressions of the same absolute reality is manifest in nature. Now, when we look at a profounder truth, profoundness here means when we look at water as consciousness or absolute reality. So how does that work? So when you say that Vayu is the source for the absolute reality or enlightenment, Vayu in the form of prana, life force, can be utilized for self-realization. Because every action we do, every sadhana we do, even be it service, prayer, self-contemplation, it involves the utilization of life force, which is Vayu. That is why the life forces are also referred to as the Panchavayu. And in fact, in Vedic Samskrita, Rudra, one definition for life force, one definition for Rudra is also life force. So when we say Rudra, when we recite Rudra, we are also referring to the life forces. So one particular definition for Lord Rudra is one who makes people cry. So the underlying meaning today is when life force, when prana exits the body drops as corpse. And a corpse is always surrounded by people who weep and mourn. So this is why Rudra as life force is defined as he who causes one to weep. So the literal meaning is he one causes one to weep because he is the manifest life force. So a lot of misinterpretation happens because people do not know that depth which is conveyed by the shlokas which give the definition to Rudra. So when we concentrate our prana and utilize it in an intelligent way, it can pave way towards enlightenment. Here, Vayu becomes a gateway to the state of absolute reality, where we are settled in the abode of absolute reality or abode of Godhood. In Mantra Pushpam, this state of Godhood, this state of Atma is not personified as any deity. So it can be taken in any way, and that is the liberty we have in this culture. So if you like Shiva, you can see it as Shiva. If you like Indra, you can see it as Indra. If you like Narayana, you can see it as Narayana. And vice versa. So water, absolute reality becoming a source for Vayu, we saw in the spectrum. So absolute reality, Godhood, Akasha, Akasha to Vayu. So that is understood as to how this abode, this source is the very, the absolute reality becomes a source for Vayu or the life force. So slowly we understand there is the sense of oneness in the mantras that we recite. Now let's take another example of another interesting stanza. So in the Mantra Pushpam, there are many stanzas. If we look at it, it's just talking about interrelation. We talk about Agni, we talk about Vayu, we talk about the time, we talk about rain, we talk about the moon. So in the Chandrama verse, the moon is a source for water and water becomes a source for the moon. This is understood if we look at the tide, high tides and low tides and the waning and waxing of the moon, we understand the profanity. But in a deeper understanding, we see that the moon is a representation of the mind. In Purusha Sukta, we say that Chandrama Manaso Jataha, though the mind is born out of, the moon is born out of the mind of the Purusha, the mind of the cosmic being. So the mind is a representation of the moon. So when you look at a profound manner, we see how the mind, when we overcome or when we gain mastery over the mind, or when we realize that we are literally not the mind, that paves way towards absolute reality. Now, there's another interesting, final interesting mantra that we will see. It talks about Parjanyaha, talks about rain basically. So rain and absolute reality, this is something which is very interesting in the aspect of Vedas. When we look at the Vedas, I believe that this is something which is very interesting. So let's look at it. Parjanyo va apamayatanam ayatanavan bhavati yaf parjanyasyaayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati apo vai parjanyasyaayatanam ayatanavan bhavati ya evam Veda yopamayatanam Veda ayatanavan bhavati. So Parjanyaha here means rain. So this again, let's apply the same principle. Rain being a source for water, water being a source for rain. Very well understood in a literal level. It's very easy to understand. So rain literally becomes a source for water in the form of water bodies, lakes, and evaporation of water becomes a source for rain. But let us look at a profounder truth. So the deeper meaning to this is Parjanyaha is also another name for Lord Indra. So Indra being a source for that absolute reality. He is the bringer of rain. So as we saw, one Swami quotes that in the Vedas, quoting Swami, he says that Indra is the aspect of the self which gains mastery over the senses. So this is why in the Medha Suktam, we have the verse, Mayi Medham, Mayi Prajam, Mayi Indra Indriyanda Dhatu. So Indra is related to the mastery over the Indriyas, senses. So, and this is why Indra Bhagavan is sometimes portrayed as a bhogi in the Puranas, because bhogi meaning one is in dwelling in pleasures, always pleasure, because this pleasure can be experienced only by the five senses. So he's a representation to that, and he represents the state of mastery over the senses. That is why he's regarded as a king. So one who gains mastery of the senses stands like a king, like Devaraja, the Indra, the Parjanyaha. So when play of creation, the play of the five elements that we saw no longer touches anyone. So how does Indra become a source for water or absolute consciousness? When we gain mastery over the senses, that paves way towards enlightenment. So easily understood. And vice versa, it is the absolute reality who's taking the form of Lord Indra. Lord Indra is a very manifestation, one form of the absolute reality. So this state of oneness, when we look at it, it speaks about a oneness between all the elements, all the deities. So oneness does not necessarily mean same. So when we say the two deities, let us pick maybe Rudra and Indra. No, they are not same, but they have the same source. It is like an example, an analogy would be, we have plasticine, we mold the plasticine into a snake, and we mold the plasticine into a cat. A cat and a snake are different, right? They have a lot of differences. They have their own attributes. They have their own functions. They have their own role in dharma. So we can't really say that they equate to one another, but they are both made up of plasticine. So that is the oneness that all of us should realize and should reverberate with. And when that oneness comes, that is when love is a natural expression, and that is how we can use the Vedas to reach or imbibe ourselves with the necessary elements for us to function as a loving being, to love and serve all, which is the ultimatum of the Mahavakyas of the Vedas. So when we talk about Indra, there's an interesting, I would end with a very interesting popular mantra of the Rig Veda. So we'll go through it. Om Indram Mitram Varuna Bhaktima Kuratho Divya Susparno Garutmane Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadan Yakni Yamamma Tarishva Namahu. So commonly quoted by Swami. So the meaning is the absolute reality is common, but the sages express it variously with various names like Indra, Mitra, Agni, Yama, Matarishman. So again, so we understand that the entire Mantra Pushpam, any part of the Vedas, if we look at it, they speak about similar truths. So the underlying aspect, principle is all about oneness. We may be different, we may look as different, as contradictory as fire and wind, fire and water appear like enemies. Even if you're enemies, even if you're friends, we have to understand that there is a common string of consciousness which strings all of us, regardless of our differences. And in reality, that is our true nature. And it is our responsibility to get centralized in that identification, to go beyond these identification with the body and mind, and you realize that we are this functional string of consciousness, which is beyond time, beyond attributes, pure water. And then when we get established in this abode of water, which is attributeless, non-definable, etc., etc., then our life blossoms like Mantra Pushpam, where we have a blossoming flower, and we are blessed with cattle, progeny, wealth, knowledge, everything that we seek for. So I would like to end my sharing here. Thank you. Sayonara.
Sam, Brother Vinnith, thank you very much for your beautiful explanation of the Mantra Pushpam, going into the depths and telling us about why and how we should perceive the words. We have a few questions for you today from our viewers. And the first one is about what is the best time to chant the Mantra Pushpam?
Okay. Right. So Sairam, brother, your voice is not so audible, but if I think I heard you asked. So the question is, when is the best time to chant the Mantra Pushpam?
Yes, that is correct. I'm sorry
yes.
about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. What is the best time to chant the Mantra Pushpam?
Okay, right. So I would always, of course, the ultimatum, I would always quote any reference that Swami gives. So see, the Vedas are, we know that the Vedas are beyond human limitations. So in a way, the Vedas can be, so Vedas meaning Mantra Pushpam can be recited at any point of the time. So, but if you want to adhere to a particular discipline, as Swami says, it is always recommended to be recited between the Satvika periods, which is 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. So because this and it has nothing to do with the Mantra Pushpam, but it's because we are established in a Satvika period. So it is best to recite Mantra Pushpam in these times. But otherwise, I'm sure that as we say that Vedas are beyond time and attribute. So it can be recited at any point of time if you really want. Thank you, brother.
Yes, brother. A related question has come, and that is, why is the Mantra Pushpam recited at the end of the prayers or end of pujas?
Okay, so yes, so commonly we see that Mantra Pushpam is always recited during offering of flowers, during puja, because that is a part of Tantra. Tantra meaning ritual. A ritual is a Tantra. Even lighting up a lamp and making a sankalpa, making prayer is Tantra. So the Vedas applied into puja or yaga is Tantra. So usually we pick mantras of the Vedas which have particular words which tell us what we are doing. So because the whole Mantra Pushpam has the word Pushpam in it, so it is recited when we are offering Pushpa. So that's how it works. So it's in many instances, the actual mantra may not have anything to do with the particular deity even. But because it has that word, it is used in a puja because it creates a sense of, it helps us relate with the mantra and the act. So it has no purpose because again, the Vedas are reverberation. So it doesn't, there are no mantras which have a particular purpose. They can be used, but it doesn't mean that Mantra Pushpam is a mantra of flower offering. No, that doesn't work that way. We use the Mantra Pushpam when we want to offer flowers. So on contemporary, that's a popular practice because probably there are no other popular mantras which have the word Pushpam. So therefore, we stick to Mantra Pushpam, particularly when we are offering flowers. And when that practice came, so it took other modifications. Because Pushpanjali is always recited at the offering of flowers is done at the end of a particular kriya or prayer. So that is why you find Mantra Pushpam commonly being recited at the end of a particular prayer.
Absolutely. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. And a related question again, actually, is around the last verse of the Mantra Pushpam, Om Rajadi Rajaya Prasahe Sahini. Can you explain the meaning of that and the significance of that?
Okay, sure. Yes, that's an interesting question. So at the end of Mantra Pushpam, we generally recite the Rajadhi Rajaya verse. So it is noted that if some of you might know that before Rajadhi Rajaya, we add the Pranava, we recite Om. because Rajadhirajaya actually doesn't come together with the remaining verse. That is why it looks unique. In the actual Vedic text, we look at the mantras of Aranyakam, its chronology. The actual Mantra Pushpam, these are words that we give. Okay? So Mantra Pushpam ends with a Samvat Sarova Apamayataram verse. And then after that, there are other new mantras. And this Rajadhirajaya appears in some other portion of the Taittiriya Aranyakam. So the Rajadhirajaya is just merged with this because in puja, we recite is Rajadhirajaya during Deeparadhana. So after Pushpanjali, after offering flower, we generally end a prayer with offering of a final arati to the deity. So that's when Rajadhirajaya is recited because it glorifies the deity as a king, the emperors of our emperors. So when this is done, as I said, the influence of the rituals affect the recitation of the Vedas. But nevertheless, the actual meaning is it talks about the emperor of the emperors, who's the provider of all victories and strength. We offer our namaha and bless me, fulfill my desires. We offer our namaha to Kubera Vaishravana, the Maharaja. So it basically talks about glorification of the deity. So it's best offered during an arati. But if you look at the actual text, the mantra from Yopam Pushpam Veda to the Samvatsaro stanza, it comes together, and Rajadhirajaya appears elsewhere. But we merge it together and recite because it complements our rituals.
Yes, certainly. That's been my experience as well. In my family, my mother recites only the last verse often after end of a puja. There's a question more generally about Vedas. This is something I was thinking about as well.
Okay.
It is, there are some mantras that resonate with oneself more, whether I like hearing one particular type of Vedam, whether it is Mantra Pushpam or Rudram. Is there a reason for this? Is there a deeper reason because we all vibrate at certain frequencies as well? Is there a hidden meaning behind why I might like one chant or one Vedam versus the other one?
Right. I really not. Yes, I understand that everyone has particular affinity. They like a particular Veda mantra more, but I'm really not sure of the reason. It could be something which is embedded deeply within us, or it could be due to our karmic influence, past lives, or maybe that particular mantra becomes special to us due to the grace of a guru. Maybe that mantra is needed for us, probably. So as much it applies to everyone, including me, as much as I love Vedas, there will be always some mantras that we like reciting and some mantras that we commonly omit. So some of it, the point that I want to share is, even if we have a particular favoritism, it should come from the right context. So for example, at one point of time, I knew a lot of devotees who were omitting Chamakam and omitting the Phalashruti for the Upanishads, like Ganapati Atharva Shirsham. It has the Phalashruti, which speaks about the various benefits that we attain but while we recite the Upanishad. So people omit because they do not want to get materialistic. So that may not be a good notion because the Vedas are Vedas. So if you recite, we recite them, and we shouldn't bring the meanings into our head. We should just let the Vedas flow through us. It should just happen. So that's the importance. But again, to quote the master himself. So again, Swami says this similar question was proposed to Swami. He actually says that those who, for example, the question was based on Rudram, Namakam, and Chamakam. So he says that those who look for renunciation may pick or may opt to recite Namakam, and one who wants materialistic desires may opt to pick and recite Chamakam. So ultimately, there's a freedom. There's a freedom. But again, Chamakam itself, if we really look deeper, maybe we can have a different talk on it. It is not all about fulfilling materialistic realms. Chamakam, it's one of the most powerful mantras which actually leads one to enlightenment. So as I said, recite every mantra. There may be favoritism, but do not omit any mantra you learn, because the true meaning of the mantra is only realized when you keep reciting it. It has to enter the skin level, muscle memory, and when it becomes part of us, we realize that it contains a lot of different dimensions which we never guessed or even fantasized about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brother. One final question for the day is, which Veda is the Mantra Pushpam extracted from?
which Veda is the Mantra Pushpam extracted from. I explained in the beginning.
Right.
So it is from the Taittiriya Aranyakam of the Krishna Yajur Veda. So initially the Vedas were just ocean of mantras. So later on, Veda Vyasa, the great Veda Vyasa, he branched them into 4, and later many subdivisions happened. So Yajur Veda got branched into Krishna and Shukla Yajur Veda, mainly because that's a beautiful story where a dispute happens between Yajnavalkya and his guru. So Krishna Yajur Veda has a portion which is the Aranyakam. It refers to the portion of the Vedas which were originally learned in the forest region. So Mantra Pushpam belongs to that. Or if anyone is aware of Aruna Prashnam, Mantra Pushpam is a part of Arunam. Arunam, it's a very large portion of the Aranyakam of the Vedas, and that is where Mantra Pushpam comes from. So probably initially the Mantra Pushpam was not probably used in the rituals, because as to my understanding, I understand that the Aranyakam mantras was kept secretive. If one wants to learn, he has to actually go to the forest, and it was learned in secrecy. So probably the teachers were teaching the Aranyakam mantras only confined to the deep forest where renunciates usually went. So probably it was not as popular as what you have today. It comes in the first chapter of Arunam, 22nd Anuvaka. So in case anyone wants a specific reference to it.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing the insights about how the evolution of the Vedas in our rituals and our practices happen. I think, and also thank you so much for taking the time and having the patience to answer our questions.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Sairam. Thank you for Sairam.
Om Shri Sairam. I just want to offer my humble salutations and gratitude to Swami for bringing us all together this afternoon to have the session with Dr. Vinnith, and as well, thank you so much, Doctor, for your time and for sharing your invaluable insights into Mantra Pushpam with all of us. It's really been an enlightening session, and we really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone's learned a lot. I've personally learned a lot from your session. So it's really such a privilege to have you here with us this afternoon. So thank you so much for that. And for everyone that's joined us and taken the time out of your day to spend the afternoon with us and learn more about Vedas and be immersed in these divine, sacred, cosmic sounds and syllables that pervade the universe and is responsible for all that we are able to perceive. It's such a privilege to be a part of this, and a privilege to have all of you here with us. So thank you for that. And just a couple of announcements before we close up for the day. So to keep up to date on the latest ongoings and announcements, please follow us on Instagram at Sai Young Adults, or visit our website at www.satyasai.org. For more information on the Young Adults Veda program or of the International Veda Subcommittee, you're more than welcome to send us any emails on yaveda@satyasai.org. And that also includes any questions, any follow-up or further questions that you may have for Dr. Vinnith. We'll try and pose that to him at a later point if anything comes up. And the last announcement that we have is our next Veda webinar will be in October 2023, and more information and details will be posted on our WhatsApp groups, on Instagram, and all our social media channels. So thank you all once again for a beautiful session and this opportunity to be together, learn together, and experience Swami together. I hope that you all have a blessed day, rest of your day, evenings, or nights, and we'll see you all again in October. Jai Sai Ram.
Om Jai Jagadish Hare Swami Satya Sai Hare Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Bhakta Jana Samrakshaka Kalki Maheshwara Om Jai Jagadish Hare Shashivardhana Shridhara Sarva Pranapati Swami Sarva Pranapati Ashita Kalpana Gita Ashita Kalpana Gita Apapati सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो